Good evening. I don't think I have a particularly exciting story to share, but when Scott said he was looking for lots of different people to share their stories, I did feel that God was prompting me to tell my story tonight. So I grew up as a child in a town called Stewarton in Ayrshire. I grew up in the church. I attended Sunday school regularly. Then I moved on to the youth fellowship group when I was a teenager. Although I tried really hard to listen in church, I found it difficult to follow what was being said, but I did always feel welcomed and at home in the church. I know that I had a very happy childhood. There was nothing I needed, and I certainly don't remember thinking that what I needed was God. But at the same time, I don't really remember that a time when God wasn't there, or when he maybe wasn't part of my life. As a teenager, I remember attending lots of Christian youth events, which I loved. And at those events, there was quite often a call to come forward and give your life to Jesus. I was always way too shy to go forward, but at those events, I did realise that it wasn't just enough to believe in God, to try to do your best, to behave well, that I knew I had to give my life to Jesus and to ask for forgiveness if I wanted to have life in all of its fullness. So, being as shy as I was, I didn't go forward, but I did quietly pray to God and ask him to come into my life, to forgive me for my sins, and to take control of my life. At the time, I never really felt a huge change, and that did sometimes make me worry. I often look back and thought, was that the moment I became a Christian? But looking back now, I can see that God was at work in my life, and that he had been for the many years before that. I think I probably wasn't aware of the difference that making that commitment made in my life at the time or in the years that followed, probably because my journey to faith was so gradual, and I don't think I really knew anything different. Over the last few years, I would probably say that I've drifted more away from God. I don't think I've ever walked away completely, but being a bit further from God has made me realise what I was missing, what the difference was that God was making in my life. I've been gradually finding my way back to God, and particularly during this time of isolation, I've had lots of opportunity to reflect and to reconnect with God. And I think, like a lot of us, this time of isolation is making us all realise some of the things that we were missing. We were missing from before the isolation, and in the same way, I'm starting to see some of the things that I was missing in my time away from God. I've learned that God's forgiveness really gives me peace and reassurance, and that's particularly helping during worrying times like this. I know that God's love for me really helps me to cope with feelings of guilt and failure that I sometimes have when I've let other people down, but also when I've let God down. When I'm really close to God, I can see him in all the different situations. I can hear his voice through things that people say to me, but also in prayer and in Bible reading. Knowing God and having his forgiveness really helps when life is tough. And particularly when I don't have answers and I have questions, it helps me to feel confident that God knows the plan and that he's taking care of me no matter what. I know that in my faith journey I'm still very immature and that I've got an awful lot to learn. Quite often I still think I know best, and I go out on my own and I try and control everything myself. But I'm really thankful that God continues to forgive me, that even when I let him down, that he let me try again, and that he keeps welcoming me back with open arms.